Welcome back to the Leeds Rhinos Podcast, episode 24. It's a Thursday, so that means it's the Q&A edition, and we'll be looking forward to hearing lots more about the Leeds Rhinos Foundation, a recent report that's just come out. We're going to give you an exclusive behind-the-scenes details on that. Plus, we'll hear about the Leeds Rhinos netball, who are in the middle of their Super League season, so lots of exciting news there. My name's Phil Daly. I'm the head of media and PR here at Leeds Rhinos. I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Busfield. Dan wears many hats here at the Rhinos, working with the foundation, but also as a franchise director, promote you there, of Leeds Rhinos netball. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Phil.
We'll get into things, and also a talented cricketer as well on the side.
Well, maybe not.
You'll know whether he is a talented cricketer or not by the comments in below from his teammates, which I'm sure will come flooding in later on. Dan, we mentioned this report. It's been done with a company called Substance, launched last week. Baroness Sue Campbell came up to AMT Headingley to help launch the report. Before we get into the details, just give an overview of what the report is and what the value of it is.
Yeah, I think it's key to point out, first of all, the foundation this year in itself, obviously the charity of the club, and we know how closely aligned we are to the club. We have the one team ethos, which is really unique in some sporting entities. So we really value the closeness to the club side, enabling us to go out into the communities. So we've been around 20 years this year. So it's been around a long time, and the kind of work that we've done has evolved over the years. Clearly our core is rugby league and rugby league development, but we know that sport in itself and the power to change lives through sport can impact on many different issues in society, whether it's health, education, crime. So we've kind of really diversified over the years, but still become experts in delivering in those areas. So I guess the report itself was to highlight the impact that we have on society and the communities across Leeds and wider. We know that we've been delivering this work for years. We've got the data in terms of numbers, participants, outcomes in terms of people's journeys. So there's some really fantastic stories. Just downstairs now, we've got the Parkinson's activity group. There's some amazing stories about individuals that are socially isolated, that we've really changed their lives, and through our amazing staff, keeping people active and obviously enhancing their lives in a positive manner. So I guess this report really was to highlight the value of all that work. There's so much work going on, and I just want to also highlight across rugby league clubs and across rugby league foundations, we've got some fantastic colleagues across the region. There's some really good work going on. But to quantify that and to turn that into something tangible is something that we've been looking at doing. We know the value of it because we live and breathe it every day, Phil. Those people do in the communities, and rugby league's a sport that's closer to any communities, close to communities than any other sport, in my opinion, from what I've seen growing up and what we see out there. So the report was commissioned through Substance, so our monetary evaluation partner. They've produced a real in-depth report which people will be able to see, but it's around the cost-benefit analysis to society. So I guess the overarching example is that at the minute, the Leeds Rhinos Foundation is a 1.4 million turnover charity, but the outputs that we produce have a 14 million effect, a social impact effect on society. So the cost-benefit analysis. So that could be assisting in reducing crime rates, improving educational attainment, increasing physical activity, people living longer, being able to contribute economically through employment. So it's all those factors taken into place that kind of the work and sport in particular can have a wider impact on society.
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, anyone who's ever seen anything here about the foundation, the work they do, you'll know full well just how important that is. But it's true, isn't it? When you think back to, even as recently as the 1980s, sporting clubs were always at the heart of their community. You all think of famous quotes from people like Bill Shankly and Jock Stein talking about how the fans are everything to it. But they were really sort of just somewhere where people came to and spent their 90 minutes or 80 minutes a week supporting their team. But actually now, right across sport, I think we've seen, great examples of rugby league. I think rugby league, really encapsulates this as part of their communities and always has been central to those communities. But we see it across all sports where sporting clubs are now actually the heart of a community. And you mentioned the Parkinson's group there, or whether it's working with offenders, or whether it's different programs we work. We're very much at the heart of that community. Things that 20 years ago when the foundation was first set up, you would never have thought we would deliver on that. Putting a rugby ball in a young kid's hand, get that. But all the other things, but actually the health benefits. And if someone, you mentioned there about the social value, that if we can put someone on a path to a healthier lifestyle, then the knock-on effect is lower impact on the NHS further down the line in terms of ill health.
It's been a real journey, and I think our kind of strapline of changing lives through the power of sport encompasses that. We know the key values of sport, but we know the wider impact, as I've mentioned, on society. So it's fantastic to see that we're hitting so many agendas ourselves, and as I said, other rugby league foundations across the country. Rugby league is one example. Centrally, there is a lack of funding, and that's maybe across the majority of sports at the minute. So it's really hard for clubs and foundations, and obviously here at the Leeds Rhinos Foundation, we have to generate that. So whether it's through public funding, applying for grants, whether it's through private commercial partnerships, which we've got some fantastic partnerships across the club and foundation as working as one team. So we've got a team of rugby league development officers going out there across multiple agendas, but we have to generate that income, I guess. And this report has given us the kind of ability to demonstrate that funding has a major impact. So it's key to our partners, it's key to local government, it's even to individuals, just seeing the power that has. For every £1 invested in the foundation in rugby league development, there's a £7 cost benefit to society again. So that's huge. So we know that it's great. I'm involved locally at rugby like you are as well, Phil. We know that, we watched our kids play. We know the benefit it has to them, but turning that into something tangible, wider than just seeing them chuck the ball about, which is great because that's physical activity. But, all the other benefits, whether it's, we know young people that stay in sport longer have more educational attainment in school. Wider benefits, and that ultimately has a cost and effect on society, and all these things assist to reducing kind of funding in other areas.
You look at that in terms of the report and the amount of the value that comes from it. Rugby league development, if we look specifically at that, generates 2.64 million worth of benefit. And I think when I first came to the club, Leeds City Council used to have rugby league development officers go into schools, teach kids how to play rugby. The RFL had their own development officers that went out to austerity and cutbacks, and that's all gone. And I think people really have to understanding that if it wasn't for foundations at clubs going out and actually having these development officers, the game would be in serious threat of where are these kids gonna get introduced to rugby league if it's not in the schools. And then therefore when they go to schools, the great program the foundation do where you introduce a child to rugby league, but then introduce that child to their local rugby league clubs to continue that journey, and the volunteers who do a fantastic job at those community clubs who then bring that through. And ultimately Leeds Rhinos, every other single rugby league club in the land needs those players, because if we haven't got players coming through, we literally don't have a game.
It's clear that there has to be a pathway, but I think your first point there is a real valid one. It's about opportunity to play the game and play sport. Everybody needs an opportunity in life, no matter what level it's at, whether it's elite or ends up at elite level, like somebody like an Ash Handley that's probably come locally through or been affected by the rugby league development plan, whether it's coaches that have been educated that have coached him, whether it's him himself being involved on certain specific things with the foundation. He's got that opportunity. It's ended in an elite level sport for him. But there's so many other people that are involved from a coaching point of view, refereeing point of view, social rugby, where it's more around physical activity, mental health and well-being. So there's an opportunity for everybody. We use the term cul-de-sacs and gateways. So you come down the road, you're in this cul-de-sac. Who knows which way it's going to turn? But there has to be a gate for somebody to get through. And I think that ourselves and other sporting foundations offer that.
Yeah, and as well as that introduction to rugby league and the showing kids that rugby league is an option for them. I know that through the schools program, actually the guys who work in the foundation actually going into schools on a regular basis as part of that program. They're delivering the PE offering for so many primary schools here in Leeds.
Yeah, so we've got a program headed up through Gareth Cook, our head of community, the Partner Schools program. So again, I suppose it shows the diversity and kind of the bespoke expertise of people within the foundation now. So we literally deliver the PE curriculum for those primary schools. I think I'll vouch for me and you, Phil, of a similar age, but when back in my day, if you had a PE teacher that was interested in PE, you got some PE. So it's really good that we can offer that full curriculum. So it's not just rugby league, although obviously clearly that's at our core, and we'll add additional bits on where rugby league development officers come in. But this is literally delivering the PE curriculum across a number of schools in Leeds.
Yeah, we can all think of different. I've seen those lessons. There's a lot about catch and pass and coordination and running and things like that. All core skills that you can transfer into any sport, and it's fantastic what they deliver there. You mentioned there about giving opportunities, cul-de-sacs and gateways, a huge thing in the last 20 years in the development of the foundation that I don't think anyone could have thought of at the time, has been our inclusivity and our opportunities for people. I'm thinking of the wheelchair teams, which we now have 3 sides that run out of that. It's incredible when you think you know, and I know James and the guys have done a tremendous job there, but also our PDRL teams and our LDSL teams. And it was great to see the guys on the field last week at AMT Headingley, and I know they're massively looking forward to the Magic Weekend. It's one of the highlight of the calendar year for them guys. So good luck to them and enjoy that. But you know, those teams and those opportunities, and even you know, when you go back 20 years, our girls and women's program that we've embraced since 2017, 2018 with Lois, and how that's hugely developed. You know, it's just remarkable that 20 years ago there was a men's professional rugby league team, and that was it really. Yeah. And now there's so much that under the umbrella of Leeds Rhinos that people have a chance to be involved in. Yeah.
Back to obviously the opportunity. We want everybody to be able to enjoy our sport in whatever format that is, I guess, or derivative of the game. Again, it's about opportunity. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, you know, the cost element of it, if that's taken out of it, just having the opportunity to play. And people do it for different reasons. You know, there might be specific outcomes at the end of it. So for some people, a lot of it, you know, we're seeing through some of our other teams, has had a real impact on people around social isolation, bringing people out. You know, as the report suggests, there's so many benefits across health and physical activity in particular. And a real big element of that has been the mental well-being. We've seen that right across the board. In every aspect, we know that sport has a positive mental impact on everybody, but in particular, if you're suffering, you know, from specific conditions, or you're isolated, or you know, you might have been sedentary, you might have not been out of the house for a while. Getting out, physical activity is amazing, but also being part of that social group, and you know, it's, you know, creating friendships that will last a lifetime, hopefully.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I remember seeing the guys out on the pitch last week, Mitch and Deck and our good friend Richard Tate. He's loving it from the old T&P days down at Kirkstall when Tony Smith was in charge. He's still throwing the ball around there. But the actual fact about, I mean, these are great, these numbers, and they do so. But the bigger you become and the more people you can help, the more expensive it is. And you know, without going whole Bob Geldof on this, we need money to keep this work. The more money we can get, the more work we can do, and more people we can help in our own community. And there's so many ways, isn't there? For you've mentioned about companies that come on board, and you know, I'd urge any company who wants to do good with their money and see an actual impact. This report explains how your every penny you spend with Leeds Rhinos Foundation will make a difference in your community. If you're a company that wants to make a difference in your community and help people in so many ways, you know, you need to get in touch with Dan and get involved with Spend That, because we do have so many partners, and they all get so much. Just value. Not even the company value, but that feel good factor for them and their staff.
Absolutely. And you know, we've got some great partners that, as you said, are doing it for the right reason. You know, at their kind of heart and in their strategies, they might have social impact reports and specific areas that they need to cover. But when they get involved, it does become a real love for that, kind of turning that into reality. We see it when we have employee engagement, so companies volunteering here with us. So yeah, it's really important. Look, we mentioned kind of the lack of funding and money, particularly in rugby league and rugby league development. You know, the governing body are doing everything they can. There needs to be more lobbying at government. We know this, you know, particularly coming out of COVID. You know, sport plays a massive part in society. I don't think it can be underestimated. So yeah, I know that they are lobbying centrally, but yeah, we need to do everything we can to keep having the impact that we do, and hopefully grow it further.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and I know there's big events coming up in the next few weeks where people can get involved and can help raise money to support the foundation. Of course, we've got the brilliant Rob Burrow Leeds Marathon, which there's the Team Rhinos in that, and then the Leeds 10K, which is the Run with the Rhinos, which is become like a staple of the calendar. Everyone's out there raising money, you know, things like that. But you don't have to flog yourself. There's loads of different ways you can support the foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen over the weekend, haven't we? Lindsay's amazing initial achievement, and she's going again. I think I'll be sticking to the 10K, to be honest. But yeah, there's loads of ways you can get involved. You know, if you visit our website, there's loads of fundraising events. Again, that are real good social events as well. So particularly from employee engagement point of view and individually, there's lots of ways to get involved and help us to keep having this impact, I guess.
You mentioned 20 years of the foundation. I remember when it first started up, and now we're 2 decades into it. It must give you yourself personally a great deal of pride to see the work that all the staff are able to do and achieve.
Yeah, you know, we've got an amazing team. I mean, I've been here 10 years now, and in that time, I've seen it change. You know, as I said, we've got some real bespoke kind of delivery, and you know, yeah, it's through rugby league as the essence is the sport, and as I said, you know, changing lives through the power of sport. You know, we strategically gone into other agendas. We don't just go off and chase funding pots and do specific projects for the sake of it. We've got staff that are really dedicated, qualified, kind of really focused on specific agendas, and that's what we want to keep growing. We know that everything we do has to have an impact on the communities, so we're not just doing it for the sake of it. You know, we work closely with Leeds City Council, looking at their strategic plans and objectives going forward to 2030 in line with our ambition document. So everything we do it to have an impact on the city. That comes back to this impact report. You know, the cost savings and benefits link into kind of the city as a whole. So yeah, we're really focused on really affecting communities. And as I said right at the start, I believe, and I feel like, you know, I'm passionate about this. You know, we're from rugby league communities. Rugby league is one of the closest sports to communities that have specific needs, whether that's health inequalities, crime rates, educational attainment. You know, we know that we can have a real impact right in the heart of those communities.
Yeah, and those communities are, you mentioned they're right in the heart. When you go to clubs and the clubhouses, and they have the shirts up of their players who've gone on to play professionally, and now with girls rugby league as well. My daughter plays, and you go there, and it's just fantastic to see. There's so many kids accessing the sport. I mean, we're all guilty of time about, you know, really highlighting things that aren't as we'd like them with rugby league, and things that need improving, things like that. But actually, as a sport, we should have so much pride about, particularly that community game and what's going on there, and the opportunities that kids are getting to play sport that might not be able to access it otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was at Alton last night watching my friend's daughter play for Dewsbury against the girls under 14s. There was other matches going on, and you know, I just love seeing that kind of I guess almost community spirit, but again, the opportunity of those young people getting out there and being physically active. It's I think, as you said, as a sport, you know, sometimes we kind of do go under the radar, and maybe sometimes even talk about ourselves in a derogatory manner. Well, we need to be positive. It's fantastic. As I said, I'm out, and like you are, Phil, out in the community a lot. We see these positive, the positive impact it's having. So let's celebrate that even more.
Yeah, and if you've got a youngster who you think you'd like them to play rugby league, or even just give it a go, go on our website. If you go on the foundation website, you can find your local rugby league, or onto the RFL's website. Find your local rugby league club, get along there, and find out information, because they are fantastic areas, places for your young people to grow and be part of something. And really, like, the benefits of that lifelong are just phenomenal. Right, we'll park the Rhinos Foundation. Take that hat off and put your Leeds Rhinos netball hat on, because you are franchise director for Leeds Rhinos netball. Have been for a number of years. It's an exciting time this year for netball. It's netball 2.0, they've called it, with new franchises coming in. Leeds Rhinos kept their franchise, with great achievement. Just give us a brief overview of where netball is at present, and we'll go a bit more into detail after that.
Yeah, I mean, personally, it's been an interesting journey from a rugby league lad from Dewsbury into another sport, into netball. But again, I guess I go back to the premise of the club and the entity that we've got here. The Leeds Rhinos and Leeds Rhinos Foundation, there's not another club in the country that's got as many sporting teams across elite or community. So again, it's an addition to our family. We've been going around 5 years now, and we've seen there's a real big community following in netball. So clearly, Gary, a number of years ago, and colleagues saw the vision to try and bring in an elite team in Yorkshire. So we were awarded the Yorkshire franchise, and then this year, part of the new Super League, as you mentioned, there's 8 teams in that league with some pretty big names now. Last week we played Nottingham Forest down at Cannon Medical Arena in Sheffield. So some people might not know that Nottingham Forest and other big city teams are now involved in a growing league, and it's been fantastic for our athletes in this city and young people to aspire to that. As you mentioned, they're moving towards professionalisation. So at the minute, the women, the athletes in this programme, many of them are having to work as well, which some could be in England pathway levels, obviously a Leeds Rhinos pathway in the elite level, but there could even be in England pathway levels, and still not being able to train, I guess, in terms of a full-time environment. The environment we offer here at the Rhinos is fantastic. Our partners up at Leeds Beckett with the training facilities up there, and wider facilities. It's been a real positive addition to kind of the whole club. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey on again around kind of making the game bigger itself and attracting more young people to spectate the sport is another thing that we're linking in with partners across the city and region to try and do. On the 25th of May, we're heading to Leeds First Direct Arena again for another big arena game. So we want as many people to come along to that game as possible. So have a look on the website around tickets for that game. It's a real great atmosphere.
Yeah, I can testify to that. I've been there with my family. They're great days out, and something completely new. If you've not tried it before, you've got elite level sport here in Leeds. Get along and watch it, because it is something very different. If you like your sport, it's a great day out, but it's the action's non-stop. And that's going to be, in particular, is going to be a really high quality game as well to watch. But you mentioned there the Yorkshire franchise, but of course this year now it's much wider than that, because it goes right up to the northeast as well.
Yes, from kind of a pathway perspective now. So yeah, we have the Yorkshire pathway, which is all kind of the junior and academy teams. Leading up to the under-23s and then the elite first team. So yeah, we've taken the northeast region on, obviously with our partners in the northeast, the regional netball boards up there, who have been fantastic, along with Yorkshire, in terms of embracing us within kind of their structures. So yeah, we cover a big region now, obviously. Hopefully that'll transfer into spectators watching the game. I want to get as many people behind the Rhinos as a franchise. I mean, we've seen some fantastic games this season, some introductory kind of changes in the sport. So there's a new 2-point scoring zone. Super shot, sorry, Phil. Yeah, the super shot. So that's been an interesting addition. For me, it's made games a lot more exciting.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? You talk about that franchise model and having a clear pathway where I'm going, because we had a lot of discussions recently about women's rugby league and where that goes in the aftermath of the Vegas defeat, and how we want to develop the women's side of things. And I think there's going to be similar conversations about women's football going forward and where that goes onto the next level. It's had a real surge, hasn't it, after the Euros, but how does it build that as a sport? And it's interesting to see that franchise model and growing as a sport in a strategic manner.
Yeah. I mean, look, we know we're not daft, Phil. We know that it's around funding and finance and the commerciality of the game in every sport. We know this from a rugby league perspective right across the board, and women's sport in particular, which we're talking about here, whether it's rugby league or netball. We need that financial commitment, and we need that investment in the game in order for it to grow. We want bigger, better games. We want better broadcast. We really need investment right across the board. And I know we had Baroness Campbell up here on Friday. No bigger advocate for women's sport, and she was clearly banging the drum, whether it's from central government or ideally, within our city. You mentioned before how many great partners we've got. The more the merrier in terms of assisting us to grow the sport.
Yeah, and in terms of netball, particularly mentioned there for John and Jill Spencer, NIC Leeds Rhinos, our naming partner this year, have been fantastic sports. And without that financial support, the sports just can't grow, because there isn't a huge amount of central funding like we'd see in football that sort of is the bedrock of it all. It's got to be funding, and to be able to, as we said with the foundation, to keep that work going, it needs investment.
Yeah, the sports across the board need more eyes on the game. And again, to be able to broadcast that, whether that's on broadcast, whether it's people seeing the sport in bigger, better arenas or, facilities like Headingley, clearly we know that over the years, it's just growing that audience. So it's the audience growth element. But yeah, they're clearly, you mentioned there, Jill and John, Jill, obviously the club president, they've been fantastic in terms of the netball entity. It wouldn't have been possible without NIC getting behind that. And them as a business and individuals seeing the value, and I guess wanting, we go back to kind of foundation opportunities, wanting the young women and girls and elite athletes to have the opportunity going forward.
Yeah, there's not many times in professional sport you can say I was there at ground zero, at the bottom level, and I helped build it up. So for companies who want to get involved, it's a great opportunity, because the vision that England Netball have for the sport is to grow and have more arena games and everything else in the years ahead. So the hope is it's going to grow and grow. Mentioned that arena game. It's our second one that we've had this season, the First Direct Arena. Be great to get a bumper crowd in for that to support the team.
It'd be fantastic. It's our noisy neighbours from Manchester Thunder coming over the hill. So it'd be great to get as many spectators as we can to that. To be fair, Debbie over there and the team at Manchester have been brilliant in terms of kind of assisting and guiding us as we go along. But, we're going to be on the court wanting to win. So come along and, get behind the team.
And there's a little bit of niggle, isn't there? Of course, our head coach, you went over to Manchester and nicked her, and so there's a bit of a grudge match going on.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it nicked, Phil, but yes. Lauren's come over from Manchester Thunder, Lauren Palmer, our head coach, and she's been fantastic so far. I think we've really seen kind of the impact she's had from a cultural point of view and a coaching element, and some real positive feedback from the team, and kind of her involvement on the wider pathway as well. She really values that from a time at Manchester.
Yeah, sorry, I get a bit carried away. I was watching a bit too much of Ben v Eubank last week. I tried to whip up the press conference there. Apologies for that. So looking forward to, we're coming into the real the important part of the season now with the netball, looking ahead to the playoffs and trying to get into those playoff positions. Yeah,
definitely keep pushing there. We've had some real fantastic performances and some really narrow losses, and obviously Lauren and the team know where they need to improve, and they're putting a lot of time and effort in, again, around work in some cases, and it's something they're really pushing, and hopefully we'll get into the playoff places, and there'll be more bigger arenas to see us in soon.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks for joining us, Dan. Make sure that you subscribe to keep up to date with all things Leeds Rhinos when it comes to the podcast. We're not going to have a podcast next week. It's Bank Holiday Monday. Plus, we obviously haven't got a game next weekend for the men's team. The women are in Super League action. Super League Challenge Cup action against Wigan Warriors over at York. So what we'll do the following week, we'll have our review of that game and then look ahead to the men's clash against Hull FC, which will see the Rugby League varsity game played pre-match. The Rugby Union varsity games were played here last night at AMT Headingley, with Leeds Beckett winning the Union games. The University of Leeds won the varsity overall. So exciting times in student sports. We're looking for a bumper crowd for that Hull FC visit. I'm sure the Black and Whites will travel in big numbers, just as their neighbours did last time. Who will bring the most? That'll be the competition between the Robins and the Early Birds. So we'll see that one. Make sure you get your ticket for Hull FC. It's going to be a great night here at AMT Headingley. We welcome Richie Myler and his band of merry men. There's plenty of ex-Rhinos in those ranks for us to have a look at. So we'll preview that next time on the podcast. Make sure you give us a review, 5-star review, so we can continue to spread the word. Do subscribe, and thanks for joining us again on the Leeds Rhinos podcast. We'll see you next time.